Hi. So everyone, this is Rob Moniot.
Hey
Should we do
guys.
Robert? This is my
Oh, Rob.
big
Friends
my
call me Rob.
okay. This is he's a director, and I actually just shot a short talking about how excited I was because this man's dreams, like you don't give up.
No.
And you're demanding. And I love both of those things about you. I'm not married to you, so I totally love them. I don't know about Steph, but I'm sure she knew the package. But I would love to talk about a little bit about the ice cream man and what keeps you going
Sure.
and like your journey into filmmaking, right? Because we
Yeah.
met in LA when we were children. Can we call
Hmm.
it, right? 20s? Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You're one of my
and
oldest and dearest or longest and dearest friends. I won't say oldest.
you know people longer than me. But I and our friendship has had many like just like life where times when we're closer and not, and times when we really understood each other and not. And I think having those friendships also when you're a creative person, like the person to be like, you can fucking do it. And shut up. I don't want to hear from you right now because I'm in my own turmoil is
Yeah.
really valid and important. And another thing that I think that's missing from the world where we can disagree on some things or not go about it the same way, but it doesn't make either of us wrong or bad. And I kind of
Yeah.
want to dissolve some of that. So tell the world how amazing you are.
Oh, please. Um, well, I mean, it's great to be here with you. I mean, any excuse to hang out is super awesome. Um, I guess I talked to them, not to you really.
You can just talk
In
to
a
me.
way, talk to us.
Just talk to me. They're
Um,
eavesdropping.
Yeah, well, so everyone should know that Holly and I have known each other, like she said, forever. We were roommates in the house, so we know each other really, really
Really well.
well.
Me and three guys. It was awesome.
Was it three of us?
Yeah.
Sometimes
Matt,
four.
Matt, you, and oh, John, four.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Let's not go
And
there. There's no internet then. We don't have to go there.
no, and this was, everyone going to Hollywood and chasing their dreams. I was working as a stuntman at the
You
time. I got my first
were.
job as a stuntman in Hollywood. At the doing the Wild West stunt show at Universal Studios and falling off a building headfirst into a pile of wood six
And how
times.
bad is your back now?
Really, really
Really
bad.
bad.
Really bad. Can't feel my toes. Um, Kids do not become
Don't do
stuntmen.
that.
I
You
knew ever since
toured with that. Wait, I want to go into this
yeah,
because you toured.
sure.
You got to go to Japan.
Yeah. I got to go to Japan on a live show that was based on all of George Lucas's movies. So I got to dress up and be a stormtrooper and fight Indiana Jones and met George Lucas twice. And like didn't just like meet him, but like had drinks and chatted for an hour and a half per time, just the two of us.
Yeah. I
Really
love when
super
you say George Lucas because then I jump to Steven Spielberg and getting to
got
pitch at DreamWorks with you.
yeah, well, I had done as a stuntman, I had done Hook. I was a pirate on Hook. And I didn't become friends with Steven, but I got on his radar in a big way, and I did become friends with his then assistant and ultimately producer Bonnie Curtis. And Bonnie and I have been friends for a long time too. And yeah, after we made PH2, I think it was Pearl Harbor 2, Promageddon, you and I went and pitched
Was it
Saving.
before
No, it
or
was after.
after? It was
Yeah,
after.
because
Yeah, it was definitely after.
she'd seen The Dancing Cow, but she was impressed with me as a director, and she showed it as as a
Right. So if
Steven.
people don't know, we're talking about short films that Rob helped direct and produce. I'd like to say I gave the budget. Man, that budget was mine because I had ran away from LA because I got divorced and he did my sabbatical in Denver. But you didn't let me go. And I like that about you. And you were in town and you were like, we need a budget. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. So when we started working together, I was more of a producer at that time and you were a director. I had worked at Spelling Television as a coordinator, not really high up in the ranks at all, but I had access to a lot because Spelling Corporate really liked to have a spy in theory on set and they considered me a spy, although they didn't want to pay me, so I really wasn't a spy. And I learned a lot about producing there because I had like $3 million dollars to spend a week. And the first year I negotiated contracts with like IATSE and the DGA and all the grip and electric equipment and camera, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
I was like a bugger. I was like I forget his name, but Lightning Works, what was the really big grip electric company back in the day?
Good question.
Yeah,
Lightning.
anyway, I think it was. So
Perfect.
I negotiated with this guy. I was 24, 25. I was young. And he literally came to set because my maiden name is Ballbinder and I got ballbinder jokes forever. And he was like, I want to know who this ball buster was that, whatever. And then I realized I didn't get any of the money that I saved spelling. So I was like, why am I saving the money? And instead, I learned to forge relationships. So I was like, this is the number I need. Let's
Hmm.
do this.
Yeah.
How can I help? Let me give my best boy grip and, whatever. Let me buy some expendables for them. Make everyone want to work for you,
Hmm.
which was my only talent. Like I wasn't very good at schmoozing. I couldn't
That's
kiss
not true. That
ass.
wasn't your only talent, but
It
yeah.
really, but it was because even when we did, what short was that? It
Well,
was
we
the
were doing,
Sony thing.
yeah, very
And
much.
the crew came up like the best boy didn't he just tested me every which way and at the end he shook my hand. I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, you could have shook my hand at the beginning and it could have been so much easier.
yeah.
But I do think that was my thing. I don't have the capacity to Hollywood.
Well, again, I know what you mean, but I disagree with you because if you decided that you wanted to, you definitely have the tools and the chops and the talent
Oh, thank
and
you.
I mean interpersonal skills. I mean, I always felt like um I understood it completely, but I felt like I missed out on, having one of the best producers in the world working with me.
Oh, this
And
is, I'm so glad
no,
this
it's
is
true. It's
recorded.
true. I mean, because I mean, we already finish each other's sentences, right?
Mhm.
And we're good friends, and we don't really fight ever. I mean, the tiffs we've had have
Yeah.
passed like 30 seconds,
Yeah,
and
but my favorite tip of ours was I forget what you wanted. Do you remember? This is my favorite us working together story.
okay.
We were in Venice in what did you and Taz call yourselves then?
It was built D
Oh yeah,
media,
Built Media. Yeah, yeah.
but
And we were in the
ultimately I'd like
back.
to direct.
Yes, that
And
was it.
Taz, by the way, is my former business partner
Yeah.
and Holly's lifelong childhood friend.
Yeah, we knew it. Yeah, totally. And talented as well. Very,
Yeah,
very talented. So, we're not talking about him because he's not here. Um, but we were working on that. I guess it was the Sony project. It must have been the
yeah, sure.
Sony for whatever event they were doing.
So
And you wanted something impossible. I can't remember which impossible thing it was because that's what you always do. And I was like, dude,
good.
that's impossible. And you barked at me. Your job is to get it, not to tell me no. And I was like, snap, you're right, but fuck you. And I think I tried it and I think I might have made it happen, but I can't
I think you
remember.
did. I think I remember that you did make it happen, and you really, really made me pay for it
Probably, probably. I was
in the
like,
best possible way.
and on that same shoot, I would like to tell people these are the things you overcome on set. We were shooting on the Sony lot. To this day, he will deny it, but our location manager, it wasn't Rick Wolf, it was the other guy,
Yeah.
was hung over and drunk and didn't show up to unlock
Hmm.
either. He didn't come to unlock any of this, was like the wardrobe and hair and makeup where everyone was getting ready. So hair and makeup arrives earlier, at least an hour and a half earlier than the crew, and everything is locked. Our grip truck was stuck in reverse. Our steady cam broke down that morning. And I
Hmm.
remember I was wearing, it was very the 90s, and I was like in overalls and I had like a wad of petty cash in my front pocket. And I was like, so can you show? Oh, Henry's here. We got Steadicam. Let's get the Steadicam out. And we were just like, solve it, solve it, solve it. I
Yeah.
don't think I got to sit near the monitor ever because it was like,
You were too busy. Yeah.
it was
And
crazy.
and I remember that day we were 2.5 hours late before we rolled anything. Before camera was even up.
Yeah.
And
And we
not
had a kid. Woohoo.
and we
It
had
was,
three kids. Remember? Oh, that
yes.
yeah, three kids, and do we had a sandbox, and we might have had an animal.
I think we did have I
Other
definitely
things
know we
there
had the
too.
crane. Like we had this
Well, and then we had
amazing,
right, and then we had we had a 30-foot Techno crane. We had an Academy Award winner, Ken Ralston, on set as the
yes.
talent. Yeah, it was crazy.
See, you can
Yeah,
only do those when you dream. I find as I've gotten older, when I knew too much, things became harder.
you get in your own way,
Mm,
right? And I think we all, when we were younger, were benefiting from, you know, both an arrogance of youth and an ignorance of inexperience
so
combined
jealous.
together.
I'm so envious of that still.
Well, but it's still, as an adult or more of an adult, it's still such a good lesson. Talking about the Ice Cream Man, my most recent short film, and we can explain why all I've ever really done is short films in a minute. But you know, I stepped into that project. Should I talk a little bit about the
Yeah,
idea?
absolutely.
So my wife is a United States diplomat. So I made my first short film with Taz, my former partner, and Steven Spielberg bought it, and got a lot of hype off of that. Made our second short film that I directed this time, and HBO bought that one. And then I wrote a feature script based on that short film, and New Line Cinema bought it, and Bruce Willis and Jeff Goldblum and Ed Harris and
And I was at the table read, one of my
Bradley
favorite
Cooper
stories.
and Elizabeth
Mm,
Banks and all these other amazing people all signed on to be in that movie. So it went from a $12 million movie to a $48 million movie overnight. And for 3 years at New Line, and then 4 years at Sony, and then 3 years at Odd Lot, and then 4 years at MGM, that movie kept getting set up with me attached to direct it with all these stars. And so I effectively was under contract to prep a movie for over a decade. Um, and I would write scripts and try to sell them and try to get them set up, but I wasn't, except for some commercials and some television, able to really do anything else. And I hadn't had my big break yet. And then right around the time that that all kind of started to come to an end, with that movie never getting made, it just kind of fell apart under its own weight. Um, my then girlfriend, uh, who at the time was a pretty high-powered film and television executive, um, decided to become a United States diplomat. And I was like, "Are you breaking up with me?" She's like, "No, I just wanted to see if I would get in. And don't worry, nobody gets in." And I'm like, "You're going to get in." And she took a test, and then she took another test. And a year later, after all these tests, she was in. And I had already been shopping for a ring. So I had a big decision to make. Do I, potentially kill my Hollywood career and go on the road with her? Or do I, let the woman that I knew was probably the only person I'd met that a marriage could work with after all those years of dating in LA. Um, and so I made the right decision and asked her to marry me. And a year later, I moved to the Caribbean where she was posted, and that began um, what is now a 15-year journey on the road. We've got 4 kids,
yeah.
um, and uh, and it's been a very cool existence going from country to country on Uncle Sam's dime. And I kept
And
writing.
getting a different perspective. I think part of
Yeah,
why I'm having these conversations, I'm really trying to get better because I used to be much better at turning off my phone earlier. But, they made it addictive for a reason, but it's not helping us, right? And it doesn't help my creativity. It actually makes me a bit lazy.
yeah. Well, anything can be like that, right? I mean, the computer that I edit on has YouTube on it. Look out, forget
Yeah.
about it. Then again, if I need to figure out how to do something in an editing program, it takes me 6 seconds to learn it on YouTube. So, pick your poison, pick your tool set, right?
Well, this will go on YouTube too. So yay, YouTube. But I want
Yes.
I want to kind of flick back to the table read because that was one of the coolest days for so many reasons. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had this amazing project and like, New Line back in the day was right up there with Harvey back in the day while we were there, right? It was where the new
The
material
good version
was.
of if there is such a thing, the good version of
I never heard a good story about him. And wait,
well,
was
they
it
made
because of
they
you
made
that I met the producer who had the anthrax beard guy?
yep,
That was a trippy thing too. Okay, that's a whole other one. So many
yeah.
stories.
That makes
But
sense.
I think for that table read, we're in Beverly Hills and I walk in and there was Bruce Willis, and especially knowing that he's what he's fighting right now, knowing that I met him and he was exceedingly private. He wouldn't talk to anyone, he wouldn't look at anyone. He had bodyguards with him when I was down in the lobby before we walked in. I think Bradley Cooper hadn't done but
He'd done
the
he'd done Wedding Crashers, and that was kind of his biggest, and Alias on TV. That was
yeah, but he didn't do what's the his big one that made him the
He hadn't
The
done
damn me, the one where he's in Vegas and everyone gets
Vegas.
away. Yeah, 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 yeah. That.
Yeah,
Someone in the comments just put me
Bachelor.
there.
No,
No,
not Bachelor Party.
dude, Bradley Cooper movies. Anyway,
If only
I can't believe I'm blanking.
I know, I know.
Anyway, well, we were in there, and I had worked with Jeff Goldblum, Wedding Man and Friend, Maestro, Guardians, Avengers, Hangover. Whew,
Hangover, The
thank
Hangover one,
you.
two, and three.
Yeah, so it was right before. I don't know if he was sober then. I can't remember. I remember he was like the main
Talking about
character,
Jeff, you're talking about Bradley.
Bradley.
Yeah, in the movie, in Hangover.
No, like in reality.
Oh, was he
Because
sober in reality?
I don't
No.
think so, because he was super
At,
edgy then.
at that
And
at
he,
that point, I don't believe he was sober yet.
yeah, so
I could be wrong.
we were in the table with the executives and I was like off in the thing and there's Jeff Goldblum and he kept looking at me and I'd worked with him and that man tried to get me fired for making a wrong turn as a PA. I had to drive him. So many stories. But he remembered me. And after the table read and after
I
he
don't
had
know this story. You
you
never told
don't
me this
really?
story.
Okay,
I
so I
don't
worked
think
on a
so.
movie so I worked at Chanticleer Films, won so
Yep,
many Academy Awards. I
yep.
chose to an intern there because someone from college who I didn't think was that smart got a job there, and I called them on a Friday. This was after I visited LA twice, and I was like, "Hey, are you hiring any interns?" They're like, "Can you start Monday?" I was like, "Yes." And they're like, "Okay, we'll see you Monday." Number one, I didn't even know where the fuck the building was. Number two, I never took a film and TV class. I just know someone stupid could work there. And if they're stupid and I know I was smart, then that was a possibility. And I knew Taz, right? So, and therefore I knew you. And I crashed on Taz's floor. I left my roommate in DC 4 months rent and left, got a borrowed car and a borrowed LA 411 map and
Hmm.
showed up at Hollywood and Vine because
Right.
that's where the office was. And Jonathan Sanger was there. And when so he was a huge Academy Award winner. And even though I didn't know much, I knew that. And I just went in there green and eager. And I think I worked 22-hour days for nothing, literally nothing for a long time. Eventually got to be the assistant to the producer on Lush Life. And one of my lucky jobs was I got to be transpo and I got to pick up Jeff Goldblum, who had just left Gina Davis, and she and I have the same birthday. So this is probably why he didn't like me. Picked up Jeff in his Hollywood homes that he was sharing with Laura Dern because I think they had just done Jurassic Park. And the
Yeah.
first day he waited 15 minutes before he came out. And if you know production time, and so he was in the Hollywood Hills and we had to go
Mhm.
downtown off the 110, and I had never driven there and I had like a little Honda Prelude, right? Like this man barely fit in my car. So he came down and Laura's like, "Honey, I love you." And she was doing her full Southern, which I can appreciate now because I live in the South. "I love you, baby. I love you." He's like, "Bye, bye." And he gets in my car and he proceeds to touch every fucking button in my car. And he's like, yeah, okay. You know how he does that? It's not an act. That is him.
No, that's who he is. Yeah.
That's who he is. And as a 23-year-old girl who is lost, who has a printout because there was no maps, no Google, no one dinging you to turn. I lived in the Valley. I did not know Hollywood. I didn't like nothing. So I am holding this fucking piece of paper. You would think the star would have actually gotten a transpo driver. This fucker was stuck with me. We stop at a red light. He leans to make sure the people next to us could see him. He was so Jeff, right? And I was like sweating and I couldn't talk and be charming because I was so afraid of being lost. And then I was like on the 101, and you know where the 110 splits?
Yeah.
I turned the wrong way.
You went south.
I did. So, but I realized it right away and I got off at the
It's
first exit and
impossible to get around back and oh my God. So he said
okay,
he was fired?
yes. So I realized it was the wrong one. I turned back around
Yeah.
and I got back on the right one. And he's like, I got a, And I was like, oh my God, seriously, maybe you're the one who showed up so fucking late. Now I'm rushing, right? I get to set, he gets out because he was on his Jurassic Park kick. He ate 3 lean chicken breasts and 6 eggs every morning. And it was my job to drop him off, get him in hair and makeup, and then go get the food because, I was a PA, I did everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Da, 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 da. So by the time I got him his breakfast, the ADs were like, he wants you fired. You made a wrong turn. I was like, that
What
mother.
happened?
I didn't get fired, but I got in a lot of trouble. I was like, fuck you. And I was like, someone else can drive him. Like, I have no problem with that. Like, I don't want to drive this motherfucker. He's annoying
Did you keep
and
driving?
late. I had to
Did
keep
you
driving him.
did it
He,
how did the relationship end? I mean, what happened when he saw you at the table read?
oh yeah. Okay. So fast forward. We're at the table read, and he's doing that. You know that Jeff, you see him, he's got an ad now when he leans forward, he's like that face, right? Like his whole quirkiness.
Yeah, yeah.
And after we read, because I also remember him nudging Ed Harris because Ed wasn't getting the jokes because he's so dry. Do you remember that? I remember that. So he's like, and we're walking out, and he goes, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. He's like, I know we've worked together. I was like, yeah, man. I was the driver on Lush Life. He's like, so good to see you. And I was just like, he did all the right schmoozy things, which is why I couldn't work in Hollywood. But it was the perfect example or the epitome of be careful of the toes you step on. They
Yeah,
might be attached to the ass you have to
yeah,
kiss later. So he
yeah.
was very kind. I was impressed that he remembered me because it had been many, many, many years at that point, but he
Yeah.
did make it difficult. I would open the door and he'd be in his underwear. I'd be like, you got a great body, Jeff, but we got to go. I caught him in the
Yeah.
room with other people, like, like all the stuff you see on set.
Yeah.
So I just think that I didn't play along
Yeah.
because I was
Well,
so busy doing my job and I was
but that's exactly why I say you if you'd made that choice would have been one of the best producers in the business because that you need to be able to not play along to do that job successfully, especially when you are dealing with egos of stars, you know. Um, that's I mean, or egos of anybody really.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be a star, it could be a DP. And I mean you know, maybe he was having a bad day. We've seen that too, where
totally.
it's like, not to say anything bad or good about Jeff because the sum of my experiences with Jeff Goldblum were he said at my table read we had an amazing time at the table read. Then he was kind enough to go to take me out for breakfast, and we had a great talk at breakfast. And then he invited me to come hear his band play, and he had me get up and sing, and then he was blown away that I could sing. And so, like I have these great Jeff Goldblum stories.
Absolutely. Like if
Um,
I was the adult and I wanted to get on set on time and I would probably be annoyed at the PA who didn't know how to get there either. But I think I would have been annoyed at production for not giving me a Teamster.
Well, so here's a funny story too. So I was doing a thing called Commitment to Life, which was an APLA AIDS Project Los
I
Angeles
remember
benefit
that.
they
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
do every year. And they'd have a big concert and they'd raise a bunch of money. So the year that I helped produce that thing, I was kind of the talent coordinator. And it was a big year. We had Billy Joel, we had Elton John, we had Eddie Van Halen, we had Barbara Streisand.
Oh, she's tough.
Um, she is tough, but
I know people who've worked for
really
her.
but also very committed to getting it right and an artist. And
Yeah.
everybody who is an artist knows that you're terrified half of the time about what it is you want to do and whether or not people are going to understand it and whether or not you can pull it off. And I had the rare pleasure of getting off the story for a second, but David Foster was in the concert hall, and she came in and the orchestra was on stage and the place was packed with people that had kind of been sitting and watching the rehearsal, and he cleared the room, but he asked me to stay
Mm.
and I never really knew why. So I got to watch Barbara Streisand working with David Foster and the orchestra all by
Sorry.
Gesundheit
Thanks.
myself, and got to see a version of her that was very unguarded because she was
Mm.
working with her very, very good close friend David, who's a longtime collaborator of hers, and the orchestra, who she thinks of as family. They're pros, right? And she was scared, and she hadn't sung for a long time in public, I think I remember, and she was very vulnerable, but also incredibly creative in the best possible way. But the story I was going to tell you was, so I've got all these huge stars that I'm juggling and no money and no time and um and somebody dropped the ball, and the person that was supposed to go back and forth between talent holding and the backstage area as the show was live didn't get back in time. So I'm getting calls on the walkie to bring Eddie Van Halen immediately to stage. And he's looking at me, and I'm not sure I know how to get backstage. I know how to go around the front of the building, but there's people there because the show's live. And Billy Joel's looking at me like I'm an idiot. Elton John had just farted. Um, and and so I say to Eddie and Valerie, okay, follow me, and proceed to lead him and them, they're still married, on a goose chase that ended up with us being outside the back of the auditorium, pounding on the backstage door. And Eddie Van Halen is giving me this look,
Right.
and Valerie too. Like I had been on, I was their favorite person right up until that happened, and you know, I never got a Christmas card. Let's suffice it. And it
Yeah.
wasn't my fault. That was the
No,
other thing. It wasn't my fault. I was just
no,
trying to help.
no. I mean, I had amazing conversations with like one of my favorite conversations I had was with Forrest Whitaker. I drove him home one night. It was,
Yeah.
we'll save that for a different episode. It was just he was such an introvert. I think the interesting thing as I'm listening to us have a conversation, I remember what it was like to be like young and so ambitious that way, because I still have ambition.
Yeah.
But me as a producer is a different part of me because I get and now have empathy that I didn't for the creative thing. Because when I go to speak, I have been in environments that weren't welcoming and where the people backstage and the people who run it were rude to me or cruel to me, or just they kept calling me, "You're so quirky." And I'm like, now I'm going to run you down with my knowledge because I have the fuck you in me, right? Because, right. But when
Yeah.
I am in my creative space, which is what I was yearning for, which what I see that make me cry too, what our relationship has always been, because you're like, no, let's write together. No,
Mhm.
can you read this? Can you give me your input? Because you know and trust my creativity. And that's a
Mhm.
gift because so
Mhm.
much of what we do is never seen. It's seen by
Yeah.
so few, and you have to keep going and be vulnerable. Like when I get critiques on my work, I pout. Like I just pout. I just own it. I am like, wow, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. It didn't come across. What I thought was there is not on the page. No one's getting it. How come you don't get it? I suck. What am I doing? How do I fix it? Fuck you. I think that is like pretty much my process. And then I
Mhm.
take a deep breath. I might go dance, um,
Mhm.
or mutter. And then a day or two later, I can get back to it. I have learned that I really need space away to be able to fix something. And like my longing in the industry was to be seen as a creative input and receive credit for it. And I think that was my big disconnect that I felt like I never did when I was sharing all these ideas. Like I remember when Amelie came out and the use of the color green, and I could probably still talk about that for hours, like how
Yeah.
the lighting mattered, how all of that mattered. So
Well, you invented Dancing with the Stars before anybody else did.
I did, mother. Why did I listen to
Yeah.
Why did you yell at me? Why didn't you yell at me?
I was
You were
probably
busy,
busy, but I did agree with you.
right? I
Yeah.
did. I had a show idea to show people dancing and to show people like in their 30s who could have been or were professional and how they could still dance and what they could do. And I had the idea of profession. I had the whole thing and I pitched it to someone I really like him. He's like, no one would ever do that. We were working on a Food Network show then. And I was like, really? They wouldn't even open the door. They wouldn't even like open the door because he
Yeah.
only knew me as Taz's friend as the coordinator. Whereas I was like, I just moved back to LA and I just need to work. And I remember being insulted that Taz didn't go to bat for me.
Yeah, but that's an amazing example though, because it's like no one, even your friends in certain circumstances, no one usually will really go to bat for you unless they're getting something out of it.
I
At
know.
least in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the disease of that town. And like what you were saying with like, going backstage and being treated badly, and now that affects how you hope to treat
Mm.
other people. I mean, when I'm on set, I tell everybody at the beginning, like I'm gonna be stressed, I'm gonna be too busy to see straight. I have a resting bitch face when I'm thinking, so it might look like I'm glaring at you. Remember that PA on that one shoot that thought I was really, really mad at her and she quit because she kept thinking I was,
The blonde?
I can't remember, but AJ was standing next to her by the monitor and she's like, "Why is Rob mad at me?" He's like, "He's not mad at you. That's just what he looks like." And she's like, "No." And so I go sit down to her at crew meal and like, "How's your day going?" She's like, "Fuck you." And she gets up and she
I don't,
quit.
I don't remember that. I remember all of you guys had like it was definitely before Steph, so don't get upset. But I think like everyone had this crush on this blonde, and I couldn't stand her work. She was not good. Like she wasn't bad. It was like the beginning of reality
What did
TV.
she
I
do?
found her lazy.
What did she do?
She worked on what was the pilot we did for Fox?
Oh, the one that I wasn't part of.
Yeah.
Uh, you want to know something funny about that? So that was
Pain management.
pain management. Pain management. I mean, I shot second unit on it, but I didn't come
I
up with.
produced it, location managed it, pretty much
Yeah.
coordinated. The girl who was supposed to be the coordinator, everyone liked her, but like she was like the minimum. I'm like, it's a three-person crew. If I'm doing four jobs, you could do more than make a phone call.
So that show was a really funny pilot that our friends Taz and Joseph put
Hmm.
together with Burn Offit, my other good friend, um, who I moved to LA with from Arkansas, and so you don't know this, I don't think. So Steph was an executive on that show.
No.
So I find out years later that my now wife, pre then girlfriend,
Was she one of the executives
she was
there?
one of the Fox executives on the show.
I love that.
Isn't that great? Small world. We totally could have been on set at the same time and just not even known it.
I don't
Uh,
think any of them came to set. That's when I met Maggie
no,
too.
there was a couple because she said she met Joseph before meeting me on that set. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah, because Maggie, again, last name I'm forgetting, who was it Janice on Friends?
Yeah, Maggie Wheeler, I think.
Yeah, she was on that show. And I loved her.
She's
Like
great.
I wish she gets more, even now she could still act. I wish she would get more attention. It's what I miss about content now. I'll do really blanket content because I'm going to go across all media in the industries. So film, TV, publishing, right? Like, is that franchises have taken over where there was a thing called IFP, which was independent film projects, where Miramax filled these niches where people who were creative, there were B movies. It was before we had like all this free content where
Yeah.
people with these amazing ideas could fill the space and move up. That's like where I always wished, like, I don't know why the timing for you didn't work because all those moving parts were there, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, why aren't they getting a break? Like, I think you and Taz, like, we'll include him because I met you guys, like, you knew him longer than at that point. I was like, you guys have the talent and you're funny. I think
Mhm.
at one point for me, I also backed away. I think I said this to you. I don't think I said it to him. You and I have a much more honest relationship. But I was like, it's the same joke. You're selling the same joke, and it's been 10 years. You got to change the joke. You got to like, something's got to shift.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole. I mean, Taz and I were joined at the hip, and we were selling ourselves as co-directors.
Hmm.
And the only people that had success with that were brothers.
Yeah, the
The Coen brothers.
Wachowskis.
Right. Like if you were selling yourself as a co-director and you weren't physically related in some way, the studios were really suspicious that there was something wrong with you. Like maybe you weren't a good enough director by yourself or something. At least that was my take on why we didn't get more um, actual, you know, jobs based on the success that we had with the things that we went and paid for and made ourselves. I mean, having Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard and David Geffen and Jeffrey Katzenberg and Paul Allen buy your first short film and have it be front page news and Variety normally gets people who have that kind of experience a movie deal.
Yep.
And we had ideas that nearly got set up and it so I do think that the dynamic between Taz and I in the room was part of the reason that that kind of stuff didn't happen. But honestly, I also really think that I was just being protected because if I'd gotten the success that I was hoping I would get at that young of an age, I would have killed
Mm.
myself. I would have drank it away or gotten something horrible. It was
because it eats you up.
well, and plus if you get success where I was at as a human, if you get success at that point, then you're right. It not only eats you up, but you buy your own press. You believe all the bullshit that they hand you, and you turn into a really, really, really mean person a lot of times.
Yeah, I started becoming what I hated. I was becoming more and more edgy. I had so many of my own demons. I had so much of my own healing to do. I think it's a great transition because I wanted to talk to you about your faith and your
Yeah,
work,
yeah.
right? Because I think you need something to ground you and it has to come from within you and be more than you at the same time. Like, because relationships, especially in LA or entertainment, are exceedingly challenging. So, my husband and I have been together, I think 22 years, but 7 of them were in LA, and we count them in dog years. See, you understand why. The minute that
Yeah.
man got a ring on his hand, women would hit on him in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my
And men.
husband, everyone. It didn't like, I don't really, I'm using I should go everyone.
Yeah.
But the temptation, whatever. And in LA, I was like mid at best, right? Because there's always someone younger, thinner, prettier, blonder, beauty standards there, especially when I was there, was the heroin chic. You had to be like a 00 or you were fat.
Hmm.
So, for me being out there, and my backstory is that my dad is an addict and that I lost my home to a fire and an earthquake. I had so much loss. I lost my virginity to sexual assault when I was 15 and I hadn't dealt with any of it. My coping mechanism was to show you I could do it, that I could
Hmm.
overcome, that I could manage. I knew how to deal with all the bad things, which is why I couldn't survive in the industry anymore because I don't have the need to prove that.
Yeah.
You're an ass. Yay, next. Like, I don't need to fix
Yeah.
it or make it better for you. I do still love the medium of storytelling that is film and TV. I just know
Mhm.
that I can't be in that creative process and handle all the stuff, or I haven't been able to for a long time. Like, that hasn't been my goal. That, like, for me, the shift when I got divorced was, oh my God, there are all these emotions that I don't know how to identify. There's all this pain in me. And if I let it out, I don't know if I could put myself back together.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And
and
so how
isn't
about
that
for
true of so
you?
many artists? Well, I was engaged briefly, and it was at that point um in my life where because I always imagined if I got married, we would definitely have kids, whoever I got married to, and having been in the rat race on the treadmill for so long in Hollywood, I wasn't at the point when I was engaged the first time. Um, I wasn't at the point where I would have in a million years given up anything for the woman that I was engaged to. I wouldn't quit my job, or my career. I wouldn't quit my quest. I probably would use the excuse that I was too busy to really take any hard looks at myself and do any kind of work on myself. And so, um, and I kind of realized that at a certain point, a crucial point. And this was tough because this was a family friend. So my mom and her mom were really, really close. And so I ended the engagement, and that was a hard choice to make because it would have been easier to just fake it and go through with it and try to just kind of uh you know keep my demons at bay. But I was also at a crossroads personally where I had realized that I'd seen enough very, very wealthy, very, very, very successful people in Hollywood to know that that wasn't going to fulfill me, even if I got what I really wanted to do. And it's tough when you feel like you have a calling.
Mm,
I do feel like I have a calling. I don't feel like I have a choice whether or not to be a writer director. I really feel like that kind of artistry, whether it's the music part or the photography part or the acting, all of these things that I've always really, really not only enjoyed but craved those kinds of experiences. Um, uh, you know, I knew that even the slightest success or the most grand version of success in my field, you know, was not going to provide me a fulfilling life. And so, you know, around that time, you spoke of faith. I mean, I did start going back to church, kind of like examining all the things I'd been taught as a kid. Um, you know, we were raised Presbyterian. I didn't particularly, you know, other than going to youth group and stuff like that, have any kind of like, you know, really strong base of faith. You know, you get to a certain point as a young adult and you realize that everything you know is what you were taught by your parents and you've got some
Mhm.
decisions to make. Um, but I did in storytelling and in cinema see a recurring theme throughout the centuries, you know, of good versus evil and sacrifice and hope and faith and love. And movies that combine faith, hope, and love, which is in the Bible, typically, you know, resonate so strongly with people. I found and I continue to find. You know, I
I
dare.
love that theme because it's so you, because your daughter's name, and we don't have to share that because I don't ever talk about my kid. But
Sure.
the other part is as you're
Her
talking,
name is Cinema.
her name is Cinema. The other thing I'm thinking is I remember you read a story I wrote at one point. You're like, and it's just missing an explosion. Like this just needs an explosion. And I was like, it's so rough. So like what you're talking about, like faith and explosions, just to blow something up.
Well, true, because because I'm also a huge fan of spectacle. You know, I mean, Greek tragedy, come on. But so I was at this point in my life where, you know, I decided that I needed to look at myself before I could be really looking at anybody else. And then I completely didn't listen to any of what I was telling myself, and I got into another relationship right away. But we started going to counseling, and I had what was, I think, 6 years in that relationship of couples counseling that was really me just working on myself. I mean, I learned a lot about relationships and expectations that you should have in a marriage and ones that you shouldn't. And then I continued to see my therapist after that young lady and I parted ways amicably,
Yeah.
even though it was difficult.
I have a story
Mhm.
about this, like around this time, because I
Yeah.
think that's when I was married and I was in my own really dark place.
Hmm.
Because I had a plan. I was 23. I was like, I'm going to be married by 24, have a kid by 26, another one by 28, my third at 30, and then I'm going to pull up to the Oscars in open air Jeep in a fucking gown and my hair just messed up by the wind. Like that was my dream, and I was doing everything to tick off those boxes. That's why I married my first one. He is also all the pain that I hadn't addressed in a human. And so as I was healing all of that, you had a similar journey. We weren't really close then, but I remember when you found God, and everyone that we knew mutually was like, Rob's found God. Oh my God, he's found God. And they were like, as if it was a rash, right? I was like, okay. They're like, you don't understand what his faith is now, and he's really into it. And I don't know, when we reconnected, I was like, it's awesome. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know why faith rattles people in California if it's not like woo woo, which I am woo woo, but I'm also very grounded in my own faith, right?
Yeah.
That's our traditions are the things that I have my family rooted in, I think is a good way, or the part of the foundation of the love and trust
Yeah.
is that when you found God, you then were, I don't know the right word, but you were more committed to real conversation because you would always banter, right? You would joke
Hmm.
around and banter, and everything would be, can I
Surface
lure
level.
you? Can I lure you? Can I draw you in?
Yeah.
Right? Which always kept me a little like, no, you can't, no, right? And but then that went away, and then it was just Rob.
Yeah.
And I
Well, there was,
love, right? So that's
yeah.
amazing.
Well, there was this thing that I did because I was abused, as you were,
Hmm.
essentially. Um, that abuse really tore my family unit apart growing up. Um, I think that there's a history of abuse
Mm,
in my, for generations preceding me. So I think that if that is true, and I don't know for sure, but it was just a gut instinct. I can see why my parents both had the separate reactions that they did. So I don't hold it against them. But um, and mom, if you're watching, I love you. And dad, I love you too. But you know, I had spent so much time with my checklist, like yours, and also this mask. What is the hot young Hollywood, director supposed to look like and wear and
hmm.
talk like, and who does he know? What parties does he go to? And and all of that bullshit. And I realized that like people that I thought were my friends were just tolerating me. You
Mm,
know, um, I wasn't going to get invited to anything. Like if someone was having a special dinner, like a private thing, I wasn't going to get, invited
yeah.
to that. Like I was someone that they worked with and maybe they didn't mind, but a lot of people I suspect didn't really like me.
Mm,
When that started to become clear, because a good friend of mine who was a friend of mine because he had to be, because we were just always stuck together. I thought I was really, really good friends with a mutual friend of his and mine. And he goes, he is not your friend. I was like, what are you talking about? And then I started seeing the truth, and that's when the walls came tumbling down. So
mm,
I had to completely rebuild from scratch who I thought maybe I was deep down underneath it all, but hadn't paid any attention to since I was 10, really.
mm.
And then with the help of therapy, figure out who I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right?
That's the real trick. And
Not who you're supposed to be or what you ought to be or what you need to be,
or
but
what
who
everyone
are
thought
you?
you were going to be.
Yeah.
But who are you and who do you want that entity to mature into?
Yeah, maturity and still have that magical drive to be creative and tell stories. You can still be both. I think that is sometimes the tricky thing, like because as a mature person, you have to make choices.
Yeah.
I don't get to just run and be creative and selfish, right? Like I have a family, I have people I love, and sometimes they need me more. Or I feel like I'm better served being there. The one strangely traditional thing about me, because overall I'm not really, is I believe in motherhood and that is really important and that
Yeah.
I chose to be home, especially when my daughter was young,
Yeah.
and stayed there and made those needs of her knowing her worth, of what value she is, and really tried hard not to give her my neurosis. Like I'm sure
Mhm.
she'll end up in therapy for something. I'm not perfect, but like she also has a sense of self that I don't think I had until I was in my 30s. And she
Yeah.
has a teenager's crippling doubt. You know, it depends on what day it is, right? Because she's a teenager. But
Yeah.
those things I think are gifts as we mature. Um, like I said, like even when I process, I wonder how you are when you process like feedback. Sometimes I devour it and I'm glad, but I still go through my whole pout routine. And I just allow myself it because if I deny it,
Mhm.
then this old version of me kind of trickles in.
I think feedback for me is is always a little different because it kind of depends on what I'm doing. I mean, one of the things that's true about my journey as a creative, as a filmmaker, is that when Taz and I started out, if you wanted to make it in Hollywood, you either made a horror film or you made a comedy, and we chose comedy, which is harder. But I don't there's some horror movies that I've enjoyed. Like I thought Scream was unbelievable.
Classic.
Yeah, so
That
good.
was brilliant when it first came out. That was
Yeah,
brilliant.
because
How about
because it allowed.
Poltergeist? That
Yeah.
freaked
Well,
that.
Poltergeist when you're, yeah, exactly. Poltergeist, and even I mean Alien, and then
Mm.
Aliens. but those that's not true horror, but you know what I mean.
Mm.
So uh, yeah, I do remember the thing. Speaking of Scream, like Drew Barrymore getting killed the way that she is in that movie, realizing that I had just seen something that I was never going to be able to unsee. You know that there was a part of my psyche, and then later I realized my spirit that I think when you take stuff in, it
Hmm.
does have a real deep effect on you, whether you think it does or not, or whether
I
you
don't
know.
watch it because
Yeah,
like
well,
so as an empath it's like too much, or I also don't watch disaster movies because I watched a movie called The Disaster in Time and then Northridge earthquake happened, then I lost my home. So like I won't watch like when Twister was big back in the day or all these disaster movies. No, you enjoy it, go to town.
yeah,
I'll be over
yeah,
here.
yeah. Well, so feedback for me because like I was saying, like it took a long time for me to realize, a really long time for me to realize that I actually had something to say. It wasn't until really The Ice Cream Man, the short film that did, we finished it last year, in 24,
Or
and won a bunch of film festivals and a bunch of awards, and made the shortlist for the Academy Awards, which was incredible.
should have
A,
won.
a very interesting and cool experience. And the good news was, since we always plan on giving the movie away to museums and to schools and to libraries, that the Oscar attention has helped facilitate a way to do that. That's really exciting. But feedback for me, I've gotten, I think, I don't want to say good enough. I've written enough scripts now that if someone reads it and gives me notes, I've learned that every note is valuable, because if anybody is bumping up against something in a screenplay, anything,
Mm.
even if you ultimately decide that it's okay and you'll leave it, you really, in my opinion, should investigate, hopefully with from a powerful position, from a position of strength, from a position of ownership, from a position of creativity and improvisation, right? A willingness to say, okay, well, okay, so you don't like this. Can you help me understand why? And if you don't know, let's talk about it for a while, and maybe we'll osmose into some sort of version of what it might be
Mm.
that's bothering you. And that has been so valuable to me, because on on The Ice Cream Man, a good mutual friend of ours just at a certain point was not understanding the script and was not into it. And then when he saw the movie, didn't really like or get the movie.
Wow.
And there was nothing, uh he wasn't trying to be mean. He didn't have a chip on his shoulder. It was nothing like that. It was not for him. What
Hmm.
was fascinating about that was the Ice Cream Man is a story with a Jewish protagonist. And I realized, and this was great, because I felt bad. I was like, I wish he really would get it, because he was a fan at the beginning when I told him the idea, but then every draft he kept saying it was getting worse and worse. I was trying to do too much and blah and blah and blah and blah. And and I realized it's a Jewish story, and my friend is Jewish, and and I realized that I was making a movie that the Holocaust looms large over. And I realized, oh, he is so steeped in this history that there was no way that anything that I could do could compete with all the stories, many of them I'm sure personal, from his relatives that were either survivors or victims. Generations of stories from that time period. I was just never going to be able to tell a version of the story I wanted to tell in a way that he could relate to.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
maybe
was,
he just has the generational trauma and it's too triggering. He's not even aware of
I
it.
don't even think it was that.
Really?
I think what it came down to me, and this was so freeing, was I was, as a non-Jew,
The nerve.
as a goyim, and I'm like, this is my take on it, not anything he ever said to me. I was making the Michael Bay version of the Holocaust for people that don't know anything about the Holocaust. And when I say Michael Bay, I mean
No,
Armageddon,
no, no. I
like
get
a
it.
good version. Like I was making a movie for people that had probably never even seen Schindler's List. Like I was making a movie for people that had no connection to the horror and the truth of the
Mm.
Holocaust. And the fact that someone who'd been raised in the Holocaust wasn't on board with what I was doing was because he was not my audience.
Yeah, I get that. I think there's so many things. I think that I loved that you took on this project not knowing. I think growing up and being Jewish and coming, my grandparents were, some of them were Orthodox. So, like, very and kosher and all that stuff. And in a time where being Jewish is dangerous again,
Yeah.
where the ancient like lies about Jews are coming back again, where social media can pump the lies, where terrorists have been manipulated really much better than the Jews like been able to share a story. What I found amazing about you taking on that was that we grow up when we go to we go to Sunday school, which we don't, we go to Hebrew school, but let's just say we like go to Sunday school, we learn all the history as children.
Yeah.
We learn that we are not liked. We learn these are the pictures that the Nazis took, and these are people who have been skinned, and these are the people who were murdered and they didn't care, and the mass graves, like, oh, and your grandfather and your aunt and da da da. Like we grow up, even though our families might have secrets, they tell that, right? It's we
Yeah.
can't never forget means never forget, and we share the stories. But since we're only 0.2% of the world's population, 99 point whatever doesn't know. And so history fades. And in today's climate, it's easy to make a villain, right? Cancel culture, whatever. What I liked, the whole point is what I liked is you were curious.
Yeah.
And when you were asking questions and receiving feedback, I could feel you processing it. But I love that someone not Jewish telling the story with compassion and learning so much and being like, I didn't know. Like, why would you? I also don't fault you for not knowing, right?
Right. Right.
So I
Right.
think there's some of that. People are like, how could you not know? We teach it in class. Well, I got to tell you, I got a kid in high school learning history. They're not actually learning
Yeah.
about it anymore. Not like how we did. So I I wanted you to grand scale it. That is part of your give it to me. I want it director. I mean, you had a full scale orchestra. Like, who does this for a short? Who goes all over the planet to shoot and have locations and get the like you do that. That's you. Right. I don't dream that big.
Right.
I remember my first
Yeah.
Hollywood dream was to get my name in the credits. Was it in Variety when they would do list production? They'd tell you who was in the staff. It's the first time, like I'm sure that little piece of paper is somewhere in a box in my life.
Yeah.
But like that was like my big thing and like rolling credits. I was like, woohoo, that's my name really
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
And the only people who in production will sit and read all of that. But I think the magic of you as a creative person is every story you tell like that.
Well, I thank you. This was a story that when we found out we were at the White House and we found out we were being stationed in the Netherlands and we'd never been to Europe before. Not really. I'd been to a film festival in Spain. Um, and I just Googled the closest beach to our house and beautiful photographs of this amazing beach. And Google in the right-hand bottom corner said, this is the beach where the Nazis executed over 300 resistance fighters during the war. And I got this picture of this guy with a blindfold on standing on that beach. And then I read the story of Ernst Kahn, the hero of the short film The Ice Cream Man that I wrote and directed. And this was a guy that uh, had fled Nazi Germany with his family to escape, death, and settled in Amsterdam because in World War I they were neutral, so everyone assumed that the Netherlands would be neutral again, and they were wrong. And he was targeted, arrested, tortured for 10 days, and ultimately executed by Klaus Barbie, who even I knew was one of the most sadistic Nazis ever to walk the face of the planet. And I couldn't believe the, and I won't ruin the story for the folks at home, but but I couldn't believe the impact that this one man had, and a very, very difficult decision that he had to make. The the series of dominoes that started, that made start to fall, um, and it really gave me this picture of the oversized effect that one person can have on their community if they're willing to stand up and do the right thing in impossible circumstances. And the tagline for the educational program that's based on the movie is, what do you choose when you have no choice? Um, and instantly I knew that I wanted my kids to know this story, and instantly I knew that I wanted to do it justice and make it as big and as realistic and as Spielberg as any, Nazi movie, should be, you know what I mean? And I went literally to people's living rooms and told them what I wanted to do and why. And we raised nearly $1 million from private donations and
I
made
know,
the
I love that because only Rob can do that. So like that's what a dream can do when you don't buckle. And you can have bad days, by the way. We all have the bad day where
yeah.
or we're not creative or whatever. And it's the discipline of holding on to a dream rooted in faith and family and desire and fucking burning desire. I'm dropping a lot of F-bombs. Just
That's
get
right.
over it. Whoever's
That's,
listening, like that just happens.
that's our
It's
relationship.
the only
I
part of
do
New York of me that is like remains. I
not
just
the
love a
only
good
pot, not the only pot left.